Good evening, everybody. Before we get started here tonight, I'd like to welcome Deacon Joe Pupo from St. Thomas Aquinas Catholic Church to lead us in our invocation.
Thank you. O God, who arrange all things in wondrous order and govern in marvelous ways, look with favor on the assembled, for whom we now pray, and mercifully pour out upon them the spirit of your wisdom, the spirit of understanding, the spirit of knowledge, right judgment, counsel, piety, and absolute fear of the Lord. May they never turn aside from your will. We ask you to protect them and enlighten them in all that they do to serve your people. We ask these things in your holy name, who lives and reigns forever and ever. Amen.
Amen. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I want to welcome everybody here tonight as I call the regular meeting of the Milton City Council for Monday, September 21st, 2015 to order. If the city clerk will please call roll and make general announcements.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. I'll be happy to call roll for the September 21st, 2015 regular meeting. I would like to remind those in attendance to please silence all cell phones at this time. Those attending the meeting who would like to provide public comment either during the public hearing or during the call for public comment, you are required to complete a public comment card prior to speaking on the item. There is no public comment for consent agenda items or items under first presentation. Those called to speak will be taken in the order that the speaker cards are received by the city clerk prior to the beginning of tonight's meeting. All speakers will identify themselves by name, address, and organization, if applicable. The City Council may allow public comment on either an agenda item or general public comment from a representative of such an organized group or association, provided that the individual shall file a notarized affidavit that they have the authority to speak on behalf of said organization on a form provided by the city clerk prior to the agenda item being called. Demonstration of any sort within the chamber is prohibited, so please refrain from any applause, cheering, booing, outbursts, or dialogue with any person speaking. Please show the same respect to the person speaking that you will expect to receive yourself. Anyone in violation will be asked to leave. As I call roll this evening, please confirm your attendance. Mayor Joe Lockwood.
Here.
Councilmember Karen Thurman.
Here.
Councilmember Matt Koontz.
Here.
Councilmember Bill Lusk.
Here.
Councilmember Bert Hewitt.
Here.
Councilmember Joe Longoria.
Here.
And Councilmember Rick Morick.
Here.
Would everyone please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance?
And before I start, I'd like to ask the Paris kids if they would come up here and help me lead the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you very much, guys. Okay, again, want to welcome everybody here tonight. We've got a special family here tonight. Thank you for being here to the Parrish family. Sudie, if you'll call the next item.
First item is approval of the meeting agenda. This is agenda item number 15249.
Okay, do I have a motion on the agenda?
Mayor,
Bill.
I'll move to pull agenda item number 15252 out of the consent agenda and move it to new business.
252.
Let's see, September 14th, 2015, special called city council meeting minutes.
Okay. I have a motion for approval with the exception of item 15252 on the consent agenda to put in new business. Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a motion from Councilmember West, second from Councilmember Kuntz. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That's unanimous. Okay, we've got that, Sudi.
We got it. I'm just, Mr. Mayor, if that's going to come forward in new business, I'm guessing that the council's going to want copies of them. And so at some point, we'll want to break
Is
to
that the
allow the
intent,
clerk to
Bill?
go
Having
get copies.
discussion? Okay.
Good idea.
Okay. All right, next item is public comment. Do we have any public comment, Sudi?
We do, sir. We have one from Margaret Lutens.
Okay. Our next item is public comment. Public comment is a time for citizens to share information with the mayor and the city council and to provide input and opinions on any matter that is not scheduled for its own public hearing during today's meeting. There's no discussion on items on the consent agenda or first presentation from the public or from council. Each citizen who chooses to participate in public comment must complete a comment card and submit it to the city clerk. Please remember, this is not a time to engage the mayor or members of the city council in conversation. When your name is called, please come forward and speak into the microphone, stating your name and address for the record, and you'll have 5 minutes for remarks. And if we could have our first public comment, Sudi.
And our first public comes from Miss Margaret Lutens.
Hello, my name is Margaret Lutens, and I live at 3515 Peacock Road. I spoke here last Monday regarding the issues of transparency, and the first thing I'd like to mention is that I did not realize until I got here that I had 5 minutes to speak about it. On the yellow card, it mentions that you have 10 minutes if you're in support or in opposition of an agenda item, but it doesn't say that you have 5 minutes. So how am I supposed to know if I don't already know before I get here? So how do I prepare myself for making a comment within the time frames, within the rules? That's the first thing I'd like to address in the name of transparency. I'd like to follow up on some of the comments that I said here at the podium and some of the comments that I had with the mayor at the exit as I was trying to leave the meeting last Monday. And one of them is regarding follow-up. I have not heard back from the police chief regarding an appointment that I've been trying to make with the police chief since Deb Harrell was here last fall. It's been almost a year, and despite numerous attempts on my behalf to email, call, go to the counter in person, I've been denied the opportunity to speak with the police chief. Now, when I look at the amount of time that I have been trying to pursue issues with the police chief, the appropriate person with whom I believe I should address the issues, I have been unsuccessful. And when I compare that with the amount of time that citizens in our city would have had to look at the budget today, it's appalling. I tried to look at the budget last weekend, and the packet item was not there. I had need to look at some of the design and review board meetings and go back and watch those, and I was rather surprised to see that the packet wasn't listed. So I understand it was posted sometime today, but how much notice, how much timely notice does that really give anybody in the city to actually look at this $26 million budget that is going to be approved this evening? I would say that that's an insufficient amount of time for people, regular people who may not have an accounting background and be familiar with reading spreadsheets, to get in there and really take a look at how our tax dollars are being spent. So once again, I'm here in hopes that we as a city can be more transparent, that we can actually give notice and give notice in a timely manner, and that people will follow through on promises or comments that they make. So that's all I have to say today, and I thank you for listening, and I hope that you take the appropriate steps to make sure that we, the citizens, do have a better opportunity to learn what is going on with our city and how we as citizens can make a difference. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, Sudi, do we have any more?
That's all, sir.
All right, well, we'll move on to the consent agenda.
Our first item is approval of the August 20th, 2015 special called work session council meeting minutes, agenda item number 15250. Next is approval of the September 9th, 2015 regular city council meeting minutes, agenda item number 15251. The next item was moved to new business, which is agenda item number 15252. Next is approval of the financial statements for the period ending August 2015. Agenda item number 15253, approval of an online registration and servicing agreement for the City of Milton and Cerulean, Inc., doing business as Rec 1 for Parks and Recreation Programming, online registration, and facility rental. Agenda item number 15254. Next is approval of a resolution adopting the capital improvements element as an amendment to the Milton 2030 Comprehensive Plan. Agenda item number 15255. And our final consent agenda item this evening is approval of a resolution by the City of Milton adopting a policy of the City of Milton with respect to the providing of representation for Milton elected officials and employees in certain circumstances. Agenda item number 15256.
Okay, do I have a motion?
I'll move to approve the consent agenda as modified and as prepared by staff.
Second.
Okay, I've got a motion and a second. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That's unanimous. Okay, we're going to move on to reports and presentations. And our first presentation tonight, it's partially it's an honor that I can read and present this proclamation, but it's also a very sad thing to do too. And this proclamation is in awareness of childhood cancer, but it's also got a very special family here tonight. That daughter Mary Elizabeth Paris just passed away and fought a valiant battle with cancer. And I didn't know her personally, but everything I heard about her and read and talked to people, she's just an amazing little girl. And I know her family's very proud of her, and I'm sure she's looking down at us now from heaven. And we'll all see her again one day, but I know it's tough and all that, but it's an honor to be able to make this proclamation. And we just want you guys to know that we're all carrying a little grief and heartache for your loss. I always think none of us know the reason why she had to battle this, and a lot of us have kids, and it could have been any of us. And so I say that as a community, I just feel that we're all sharing in the loss, because it could have been Mary Elizabeth or one of our children, and obviously it's happened to a lot of folks. But just so that you know, we're here to support you guys, and we are grieving with you. So I'm going to read the proclamation, then I'm going to bring it down and present it to Mary Elizabeth's family. It's a proclamation on Childhood Cancer Awareness Month. Whereas families, caregivers, charities, and research institutions across the United States, as well as our national government, are observing the month of September as Childhood Cancer Awareness Month. And whereas Mary Elizabeth Paris was known by many in Milton as the face of a fighter. Yet unfortunately she lost her battle with childhood cancer earlier this year. And whereas the many hearts Mary Elizabeth touched as she fought this terrible disease is staggering, and she inspired our community to fight right along with her. And whereas, according to the American Childhood Cancer Organization, 15,780 children under the age of 21 are diagnosed with cancer every year in the United States. Approximately 25% of them will not survive this disease. And whereas progress against some childhood cancers has been made, cure rates for many forms of childhood cancer remain less than 50%. And whereas childhood cancers cross all racial, ethnic, geographic, and social backgrounds, and whereas in the month of September, we honor the children who have or still are battling with cancer and or its after effects, their families, their caregivers, the researchers and healthcare professionals, concerned citizen advocates, and private philanthropies who collaborate to provide hope and assistance to the children and their families affected by childhood cancer. Now therefore, we, the mayor and the city council of the city of Milton, hereby dedicate and proclaim this month of September in honor of Mary Elizabeth as Childhood Cancer Awareness Month in the city of Milton, Georgia. And this is given under our hand and sealed the city of Milton, Georgia on the 21st day of September 2015. And if the council would join me and Mary Elizabeth's family would step forward. I've got a little something here I want to give each of you kids. This is a key to the city, and this is in honor and memory of your sister. So you guys keep this and know that you always have a key to the city in her honor, okay? Sure, can't read that, though. It's never locked. Just, you know, as a, you know, like I said, okay, if we can move on to our first presentation.
Yes, sir, Mr. Mayor. I'm going to be the clerk while she's out making some copies. We move on to first presentation, which is consideration to adopt the impact fee ordinance and to create Chapter 25 impact fees in the City Code of Ordinances. It's agenda item number 15257.
Okay.
Mayor, I'll approve the reading of the first presentation.
I'll
Okay.
second it.
I have a motion by Councilmember Kuntz, second by Councilmember Thurman. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That's unanimous. Okay, if we can move on to our public hearing. Chris, I'll let you read that.
Sure. Our first public hearing item is consideration of an ordinance to adopt amendments to the fiscal 2015 budget for each fund of the City of Milton, Georgia, amending the amount shown in each budget as expenditures, amending the several items of revenue anticipations, prohibiting expenditures to exceed appropriations, and prohibiting expenditures to exceed actual funding available. It's agenda item number 15247.
Okay.
Good evening, Mayor and Council.
Stacy.
The goal of the fiscal year 2015 budget amendment is to bring everything in line with actuals today to what we expect to get or project to spend by the end of the fiscal year. In the general fund, the revenue will be increasing by $1.5 million, $1,501,635, and expenditures will increase by $8,741. The net difference of $1,492,894. The major changes in revenues include property taxes. They've been billed and are higher than anticipated at this point in the fiscal year. We anticipate tax collections to be $774,473 more than what we have budgeted. Local option sales tax is trending higher than projected and is anticipated to be $400,000 more than what was projected in March for the mid-year budget adjustments. And insurance premium tax has also been adjusted to reflect anticipated collections based on prior year revenues received. Did you have any questions about any of the revenues at this point?
When do we actually get the final figure for the insurance premium tax?
October 15th.
So we will not know a final figure until then.
Correct.
Any other questions?
Okay, moving on to expenditures. The major amendment in expenditures includes the Public Works and the Community Development Department, where we transferred 3 employees from Community Development into Public Works. Other than that, there are some minor moving around of monies between departments. I can go through each one of those individually if you'd like. Okay. In the city clerk department, we're decreasing it by $17,308 for group insurance to bring the budget in line with what actuals are in that department. In general administration, we're increasing the toner supply line by $3,500 to reflect actuals spent so far. In human resources, this wasn't included in your packet after the meeting that I had this morning with a couple of council members. We talked about human resources has a budget for employee training, and we sent one employee to Leadership ICMA, and it would be better to book that training in the actual department to move the appropriations out of HR into I&E. Innovation and engagement is where it went. So we're moving $3,200 out of human resources into innovation and engagement to cover the travel for that particular training. In Public Works, I mentioned the transfer of the employees. So we're increasing that budget by $202,394 to account for transferring those employees from community development over into Public Works. Again, those employees are the arborist, the construction inspector, and the plan review engineer. In community development, you'll also see a decrease in there by $195,545 to move those employees out. In other financing uses, we are increasing the operating transfer out to Capital Projects Fund, $15,700, and this is to cover the expense of replacing the InterGov software with another module in Encode for business licenses. You'll notice, especially in the FY16 budget, that there isn't an appropriation for InterGov in the IT department, and that's because we're no longer using InterGov. We replaced that with partially Encode, and the other part is Meritage, which is the software provided by SafeBuild. In the Special Events Fund, there's an increase to the Hotel Motel Tax Fund line item, which is an operating transfer in from the Hotel Motel Tax Fund of $10,000. The Hotel Motel Tax is that fund in particular is a pass-through fund. Anything that we receive in that fund either gets transferred out to the Special Events Fund or to the general fund to cover any costs associated with website maintenance and things like that. So hotel motel taxes are coming in about $10,000 more than what we anticipated at this point. The E911 fund is increasing $80,000 because the revenues are coming in higher than anticipated. This is also a pass-through fund. Any monies that we receive from E911, which is the prepaid wireless, gets passed through and goes to Alpharetta to pay for the IGA that we have with them to provide our E911 services. In the Capital Projects Fund, there are several items that are increasing in revenues. Infrastructure maintenance fees are increasing by $20,000. Penalties and interest on infrastructure maintenance fees. This is when one of the sanitation haulers does not pay their infrastructure maintenance fees on time. We charge them a penalty or an interest. That's a new line item that we have. Sidewalk replacement is increasing by $54,726. That goes straight into the sidewalk paving line item that we have. Infrastructure maintenance fees goes into pavement management. Traffic calming is increased by $1,329. That goes into the traffic calming line item under the Public Works Department. True recompense is increasing by $147,000, and that goes into the offset the true recompense. What is that thing called? It is called the true recompense line item and under expenses under community development. Clever of me. Landfill use fees is increasing by $25,440. That goes into pavement management. Interest revenues, I'm bringing that down by $1,295 because it just isn't coming in as high as anticipated. Insurance proceeds is increasing by $10,225, and that is going into the new vehicle line for Public Works because that was for a vehicle that was in an accident, and that was the insurance payout for replacing that vehicle. And then operating transfers in from the general fund is $15,700, and that offsets the cost for the computer software. Did you have any questions on any of that so far?
Questions? Bill?
we spent any of the tree recompense funds here recently?
We have spent $7,300 so far, or as of 9/1, and I believe that was moving trees from a property on Highway 9 over to our park property. It was some plantings that we required of a property owner, and they were in the Georgia transmission line and in their easement, and they had to be moved. So we paid for the cost of moving that into our park. And so we have some additional trees in the park.
Thank you.
We anticipate, so just in follow-up to that, we anticipate a good many of, or at least a substantial amount from that line being planted at our new City Hall project. The city attorneys were comfortable with using tree recompense to do a large portion of the landscaping, at least the tree part at new City Hall in Crab Apple.
In the capital grant fund, we are increasing the CDBG line item by $24,700, and that is to pay for some sidewalks that we are going to be putting in. And I believe also it was for, I guess, replacing the sidewalk out in front of the senior center. Yes. Yes, making it ADA accessible. We are increasing the revenue line item by $78,600 for LMIG funds by $78,684, and that is to reflect the actual revenues that we received, and that goes straight into pavement management. It offsets the pavement management costs for the year. And that is all I have.
Okay. Is there any questions right now for Stacy? Do we have any public comment on this?
We do not, sir.
Okay, I'll close the public hearing. Any discussion? If there's none, I'll ask for a motion.
Mr. Bear, the motion will come later in the meeting when we're into unfinished business.
Thank you for calling me on that. If we'll move on to the next public hearing item then.
Our next item is consideration of an ordinance of the Mayor and Council of the City of Milton, Georgia, to adopt the fiscal 2016 budget for each fund of the City of Milton, Georgia, appropriating the amount shown in each budget as expenditures, adopting the several items of revenue anticipations, prohibiting expenditures to exceed appropriations, and prohibiting expenditures to exceed actual funding available. Agenda item number 15244. This was discussed at the August 10th work session. First presentation was at the September 9th meeting, and the first public hearing at the September 9th meeting. Mr. Chris Lagerblum.
Mayor and Council, good evening. Thank you for allowing me the opportunity to present this year's budget during this public hearing, and also for your consideration of it later in the meeting under unfinished business. As the clerk just indicated, the budget was presented. This is its fourth actual appearance in front of the council, and many of the council members have met with individually or collectively in a small group environment. A couple as recent as this morning. I'll let you know that in terms of how we budgeted this year, as we've made presentations before, we use the same process that we've used in prior years, and that is to anticipate the needs of the city for the maintenance and operating budget that we need to put together that continues to operate the city in good standing with its current level of service. We then look at new initiative requests that different departments might have as enhancements to existing services, and we also look towards our capital improvement plan and look towards funding a legitimate 7-year capital improvement plan that has dollars that we anticipate to be available for the projects that are the projects that seek funding. As is in keeping with what was the request of the council last year, we moved the capital projects budget to a budget that didn't take a large project and incrementally fund it over a period of time, but rather trying to anticipate when the project would actually happen and fund projects in real time, where typically you'll see a year of design leading into a year of actual project construction, and that's where we have buildings that need to be replaced or built, or fire stations, Station 42, for example, that is in design, or anticipated to be in design next year, and then in renovation or construction the following year. So that was the mindset, again, that was used in putting together the capital budget. But let me back up and give some high-level overview for the purpose of this public hearing, that we anticipate revenues to be $26,293,278. As I work through and look at the different departments, maintenance and operating, with the exceptions of having to move some folks around to fit into correct departments, as Stacy alluded to earlier, Not a lot of change year over year from the maintenance and operating aspect of the budget. We've kind of, I think, to this point, honed in what are the, we always talk about sharpening the pencil, and we have sharpened the pencil every year. And I think we've gotten good at identifying what the basic needs of the city are to continue to deliver a level of service. A couple of things that are always highlighted every year that we don't get to until almost the adoption of the budget, and that is what we do with respect to employee benefits as it relates to health care and the increasing costs of health care. I can tell you that this year was better than last year in what we received from Blue Cross Blue Shield. And we've gone through open enrollment and through a series of plan design changes. We have really essentially split some of the increase that happened with the employees themselves, and either a decrease in the benefit itself or an increase in the cost. We brought on a high deductible health plan option this year, which has been used by more employees than I thought. That's this thing we talk about that couples with an HSA, which is potentially where the world is, or at least where the nation's heading with health care plans as we move towards the future. So we did bring one of those on board this year and start the education process that goes along with that, so that hopefully we'll have more employees take that as an option as we move forward. We incentivized it with the price and with the education on how a high deductible health plan allows you to actually roll dollars over from year to year. So it's actually a pre-tax benefit to the employee to look at one of those for the longer term. The budget does have a 2.5% cost of living adjustment in it, or a market adjustment for city employees. I can tell you, as we move forward into the initiatives that were asked for in the budget process this year, there was a $72,000 initiative that was asked for in the technology department to deal with infrastructure design and implementation for our transition to a new city hall building. The Human Resource Department asked for a market competitiveness survey and study. This is an independent look at how we compare to those that we compete with in the workplace to retain and recruit good talent. Innovation and Engagement asked for a sound system for ceremonies. Take you back to the opening of the library and kind of give you an example of what a good sound system actually sounds like versus a podium that we might drag around and put in front of a groundbreaking. I think we're to the point now that we're opening enough facilities that people being able to hear us at those types of events is important. One of the things that we've talked about is the relocation of our municipal court and the relocation of that court to the Alpharetta Annex building in Crabapple. The city attorney and I delivered an intergovernmental agreement to the city of Alpharetta that we felt captured what we had discussed when we met with Alpharetta, when I met with Alpharetta and their city administrator. That document has not come back to me approved by the city of Alpharetta at this point. I know we talked early on that we were both going to try to bring it to our councils on this meeting. I do not report to you tonight that it's ready to come forward. Alpharetta has some comments and changes they are going to suggest to it. I do not know what those are. So at this point, Mr. Regis and I are focusing on October the 5th. So the costs that are in here in the budget are based upon what he and I had talked about previously. I may at some point have to come back to you and say that either that idea and that concept no longer makes sense and make a recommendation to go a different direction. I may be able to come back and affirm that, in fact, we have the right dollars in the budget, or I may have to come back to you and say, based upon changes that Alfred is suggesting to make to it, I need to either seek additional funding or seek your direction as to whether or not it remains a good idea. I don't have any reason to believe that any of that's the case. I think it's probably still on track. I just can't report that tonight. The police department has asked for a crime site imager. If you have any questions about that, I will defer that to the police department as opposed to trying to explain what that is. I believe it has to do with fingerprints and crime scene investigation. In the fire department, initiative requests a public education program initiative. One of the big things that the fire department does is public outreach. We've done public outreach in the form of fire clowns and public outreach in the form of community risk reduction education. This is actually a new educational tool that the fire department would like to bring on board that brings a costume animal of some type. I think it's a Sparky, the fire plug or something along those lines that will be further used in probably our elementary schools and other daycare type facilities across Milton as we endeavor to enhance the public education and outreach of the fire department. They've also asked for a RIT Pack 3, which is a safety device, a Scott's RIT Pack 3, an advanced stroke life support training center, as well as some landscape improvements at Station 41 and 43. Those are actually the requests of Mr. Lucas in the fact that they are more or less gateway stations to our community, and as we look at gateway stations, particularly buildings that we are responsible for, we believe that we can increase that level of visibility as people enter into our city and see our buildings for the first time. We've asked for some Broadwell Pavilion improvements. After trying the farmers market there for a year, we recognize that that was not heavily attended. We're seeking to put in irrigation as well as sod over there, and to do a couple of other things that we've heard from the community are desired. And one is to do away with the chains that are in the front of that particular location and actually put in gates so that somebody could have a child's birthday party there, for example, and not have to worry about kids getting out into the sidewalk or the street. So we're looking at putting some gates and enclosing those, as well as putting a fence to surround those utility boxes that are in the front top right corner as you're looking at the site. Not that there's any safety issue today, but just to keep people segregated and away from those. That's in this dollar figure as well as some fans to go in the pavilion. You don't realize it until you've started to hold events there that with the orientation of the facility, an afternoon sun comes straight over the Alpharetta Government Building and hits anybody in the back who happens to be standing there and looking straight at whatever is happening up near the fireplace. So some fans are being requested to try to keep the temperature down. That's been really the only feedback we've received from people that have used it over the summer months. Also included in that figure are the costs to remove a couple of those trees on the site if in fact we have to. And I'm not suggesting tonight to you that we're going to come rushing to take down any of those trees. They're quite beautiful. But the two that are at the back of the site, we've done some work with their roots to try to enhance their structure and to make sure that they are able to survive for a period of time without being a safety hazard to the park itself. But in the event that we get a report that says that they are a safety hazard to the park, we really have no other choice but to come back and recommend that we take them out, simply so we don't withstand the liability that goes along with having trees on our site that aren't necessarily as structurally sound as we'd want them to be. We're asking for, and I'll tell you based upon a meeting I had this morning, I'm going to be finding a way to fund an alarm system at the birdhouse, so that funding will go back in. Landscaping services for city parks. Excuse me. We have a couple of parks that we think should enjoy a higher level of landscape maintenance than maybe other parks. The one right out here at the corner is a prime example. It is a kind of a gateway park. It's an acre, and it deserves a little bit better landscaping, cut and mulch and mow and all that aesthetic look than maybe what we do in some of our larger parks where we come out with these big large mowers and basically take swaths against a big wide area. We're just not seeing the level of quality and level of detail that we think a couple of these parks that are used to host special events probably should be afforded. One of the things coming to the end here that the Parks Department has asked to do is to take the position that was vacated by Mr. Gillum when he took a director's job in the city of Canton. So they did a job task analysis based upon the performance of that position and are asking to reclassify it from a coordinator position to a manager position based on actual job duty. Bringing up the rear here in the Community Development Department, 2 initiative requests. One is a conservation project manager. We've talked about that with the council as to having a face of the conservation project in Milton. We're recommending that we look towards implementing the job description that has been distributed to the council that contemplates a half or part-time employee. And that's what this funding is for, as well as based upon a job task analysis and a position reclassification to reclass the city architect position from a grade 36 to a grade 38. If you have any questions on how that was done, I'll defer that to the Human Resource Department. Questions thus far?
Questions?
Okay, moving into the capital improvement plan, which is what we move into next. I can tell you that this document, and y'all have been through it many times, some high-level, I guess, description of what's included in here is additional and then anticipated final funding of the City Hall project to match its construction timeline. Additional funds towards land conservation and the Green Space Bond Initiative. We fund the vehicle replacement reserves and general admin as well as police and fire based upon a vehicle replacement reserve schedule, which will allow us to purchase future assets to include police cars and fire trucks with cash and without accumulating any debt. The fire department has asked to start work towards a live fire training facility this year. I had the fire chief meet with a couple of council members this morning and understand that this is kind of a work in progress and an evolving, but potentially evolving thing for the city of Milton, where we're just not having access to a different facility here with any regularity locally and within the geography that Milton would want to desire to send a fire truck to perform that type of training, that we might look towards bringing that type of a facility up behind Station 43, and then also maybe seeking others to use it who are also in the same boat of looking for that type of a facility.
Chris,
Sir.
just might add to that also, the police department probably has the ability to utilize that facility there too. So.
Yeah, absolutely. Anytime you create a structure like that, you can do exercises in it. So, yeah, very, very, very good point.
So it's not entirely for the fire department. So.
Excellent point. We start the design, or we're in design now, for the replacement of fire station number 42. That station was intended to be replaced by Fulton County, I believe, some 18 years ago, or some crazy number like that, and it's still standing in the condition that it was anticipated to be reconstructed 18 years ago today. So we've got some funding in to start the design on that, and we'll bring back updates on that as well. You can see we continue to fund bridge replacement. We continue to fund pavement management at a level that we believe keeps us with our pavement condition index at the level that the council has desired, which at last check was a 70, an average of a 70. You can tell we've got restriping of existing roads back in there, sidewalk construction. I want to talk about that. I'll get back to that here in just a second. We anticipate future funding for the trail connection to the Big Creek Greenway. We look towards a mobile traffic control center out in 2018 and 2019. We fund and ask you to fund the North Fulton CTP. And other than that, in the parks, you can see that we start to look towards Providence Park with a contribution of $250,000 anticipated in 2016, with some additional funding programmed out in 17, 20, and 21. We've got some IGA improvements at Northwestern Middle School, as well as some gateway signage and historic marker designation money over the next couple of years. This capital improvement plan is no stranger of a document to this council, so I have kind of gone through it with a fairly rapid pace. That's what we are contemplating. That's what we're asking you to fund this year in the CIP. Again, it's a 7-year plan. When you look at what the costs are associated with the CIP each year over year, they're dollar figures that we believe, based on revenues and anticipated future expenses, is that we're giving you a CIP that's actually doable, and not one that holds placeholders for projects that we don't think that we can actually get to. One of the things we have as well is the fund balance policy to look at, and I'd just like to bring your attention. The council has adopted a fund balance policy that seeks to use anything in excess of 21% towards one-time capital projects. And in this year, based upon the fund balance as it existed, as well as how we finished the end of fiscal year 15, the dollars that you would have to allocate to the CIP or to the one-time capital projects is $5,457,000. Staff is proposing, accordingly, or of course could be something that the council would change. We're proposing to allocate $1.5 million to the City Hall construction project to align the funding with the design development cost estimate that we're receiving now as we move into construction drawings. We're also proposing to use another $2 million to fund the acquisition of future parkland, $750,000 to add to sidewalk construction, $200,000 for dam maintenance. There's an additional $1,007,000, which we're asking the council at this point to consider holding in an account as we receive bids back in October for the Northwest Connector Road in Crab Apple. We've talked about that road for many, many years. And it is out to bid at this point. The costs of construction are very different today than we were seeing 3 and 4 years ago. And we think that it's probably wise at this point, if that project is a priority, to continue to hold some funds if in fact those bids come in mid-October and they are more than what is anticipated in that project. If they're not, and if we are well funded in the project and can actually move it forward with what we have in the budget itself, we'll come back to the council and ask you to prioritize. Unless you choose to change priorities tonight, we'll ask you to prioritize where those funds are going. I would be happy to answer any questions you have at this point, or happy to answer any questions when we get to it in unfinished business, but for the purposes of the public hearing, that would conclude my presentation.
Yes. Do we have any public comment on this?
We do not, sir.
All right, well, I'll close the hearing, and again, if anybody has any questions now or later in the agenda on this. Do I hear any questions? Okay. Before Before we move into our zoning agenda, as I mentioned, Karen, I'm going to ask you to take over at this point, as I have to leave. But for the record, I support the budget that we have in front of us.
Is it okay for me to sit here, or you want me to go down to where he's?
The broken chair.
I'm sorry, so for those in the audience that couldn't hear me, I apologize. I'll lean forward and talk louder. Dave, can you turn me up? You're up. I'm up. Okay, so it's all my fault. I got it. Roger. No, you're fine there if you're comfortable there.
Fine here.
I'll just.
He said his chair's broken. Mine's okay.
We'll move into the zoning agenda.
Will the city clerk please read the zoning rules and sound the item?
At the second regularly scheduled meeting of the month, the mayor and city council consider a zoning agenda. These items include rezoning petitions, modifications of zoning, use permits, and associated concurrent variances, in addition to ordinances, resolutions, and text amendments. I would like to acquaint you with some of the rules and procedures for the meeting. The applicant and all those speaking in support of an application will be allowed a total of 10 minutes to present the petition. The applicant may choose to save some of the time for rebuttal following the presentation by the opposition. Since the burden of proof is upon the applicant will be allowed to make closing remarks provided time remains with the allotted time. The city clerk will be keeping track of time. Those called to speak will be taken in the order that the speaker cards are received by the city clerk prior to the beginning of tonight's meeting. Before beginning your presentation or comment, please identify yourself by name, address, and organization if applicable. Our first zoning item this evening is consideration of RZ 15-15 to amend the rural view shed within the rural Milton overlay for single-family type uses, section 64-114A. This is agenda item number 15-242. First presentation was heard at the September 9th City Council meeting and discussed at the September 14th work session. Ms. Kathy Field.
Thank you, Madam Mayor Pro Tem and members of the City Council. As the City Clerk mentioned, we did discuss this at the workshop last week. And as I explained at that time, because this item has been advertised, it does require some action by the City Council. Staff would recommend that action tonight be to withdraw this item. And that is because the conservation initiatives that are included in this item will be carried forward and be part of a discussion, as well as other conservation items that will be discussed as well when we open up the zoning districts for the single-family uses. And we will consider a package of text amendments. Those have already been advertised, and so you will see them as they move through the process of the Planning Commission and on to you. So at this point, I would suggest that this item is deficient in that it doesn't include all the items that will be subsequently discussed with the text amendments that you will see in 2 months.
Are there any questions of staff? Do we have anyone wishing to speak on this item?
We do not.
Then the public hearing is now closed. Is there any council discussion? Is there a motion and a second?
Madam Mayor Pro Tem, I'll move to withdraw RZ 15-15 to amend the rural view shed within the rural Milton overlay for single type or family type uses, section 64-114A, agenda item number 15-242.
Second.
We have a motion to withdraw RZ 15-15 by Councilmember Luss, seconded by Councilmember Coons. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposition? Motion carries. Moving on to unfinished business. Will the clerk please sound the item?
This is consideration of an ordinance to adopt amendments to the fiscal 2015 budget for each fund of the City of Milton, Georgia, amending the amount shown in each budget as expenditures, amending the several items of revenue anticipations, prohibiting expenditures to exceed appropriations, and prohibiting expenditures to exceed actual funding available. Agenda item number 15243. First presentation was at the September 9th council meeting. Public hearing was held at the September 21st meeting this evening. Ms. Stacy Inglis.
So we've already discussed each of the amendments in detail whenever we had the public hearing. So to reiterate, the revenue appropriation will be increasing for general fund by $501,635, and expenditures appropriations will increase by $8,741. I'll be happy to answer any questions that you have at this time.
Is there any council discussion? Is there a motion and second?
I'll make a motion to approve agenda item 15-243.
Second.
We have a motion to approve an ordinance to adopt amendments to the fiscal 2015 budget for each fund of the City of Milton, Georgia, amending the amounts shown in each budget as expenditures, amending the several items of revenue anticipations, prohibiting expenditures to exceed appropriations, and prohibiting expenditures to exceed actual funding available. The motion was made by Councilmember Hewitt and seconded by Councilmember Longoria. Is there any further council discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposition? Motion carries.
Thank you.
Moving on to our final unfinished business item, will the clerk please sound the item?
This is consideration of an ordinance of the Mayor and Council of the City of Milton, Georgia, to adopt the fiscal 2016 budget for each fund of the City of Milton, Georgia, appropriating the amount shown in each budget as expenditures, adopting the several items of revenue anticipations, prohibiting expenditures to exceed appropriations, and prohibiting expenditures to exceed actual funding available. Agenda item number 15244. This was discussed at the August 10th work session. First presentation and first public hearing were heard at the September 9th council meeting, and the second public hearing was heard this evening. Mr. Chris Lagerbloom.
Madam Mayor and the council, for the record, defer to the presentation that I made just moments ago on this exact same document. For the purposes of adding some clarity to it, for those that might just tune in at this point in the meeting, I can tell you that we anticipate revenues to be $26,293,278. We discussed the manner in which the budget was put together, the process by which we went through, the fact that we worked on the maintenance and operating budget of the city first. We then looked at new initiative requests of departments as well as a 7-year capital improvement plan. This budget calls for the funding of the special events program as well as calls for the funding to be able to continue the 911 center with Alpharetta, as well as how to expand confiscated assets. And is a budget that we would recommend your adoption of. It will carry us through beginning October the 1st to September the 30th of next year. It also contemplates that we use some of the funds that are existing in the fund balance to bring the fund balance back in line with the policy that you've set, and seeks that we propose to allocate to the CIP $1.5 million to the City Hall construction project, $2 million to fund acquisition of future parkland, $750,000 to add to sidewalk construction, $200,000 for dam maintenance, and asking again that you hold the remaining $1,007,000 in a fund until we receive the bids back for the Crabapple Northwest Connector Road, at which time we'll either make a recommendation to fund that if additional funds are needed or bring back to the council those funds for reappropriation as you find fit based upon the policy direction that you would provide at that time. I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have, but I'll largely defer back to the presentation that I made just moments ago.
Councilmember Longoria?
Chris, Stacy, first of all, obviously we've been working some time on this budget, and I don't necessarily have questions about the budget per se, but specifically to some citizen comments earlier in this meeting. How do we make the budget and the budget that we're considering available to the general population, our citizens? I'm assuming that there's some, although I don't ever look at it because I get it in other means. Isn't it available on our website? Can people download it? Can they look at it? Is it obvious where it is? Is it easy to access? What can we say about the availability and the
access that our regular citizens have to these documents?
Sure. The budget that has been presented throughout this process has been carried on the city's website and is captured as the packet, so to speak, of each individual meeting. In addition to the website, which is kind of a backup source of advertising, the real budget advertising that happens occurs in the newspaper of general circulation, which is the Milton Herald. We did recognize this morning that, in fact, at 9:14, actually, we recognized this morning that the packet for tonight's meeting had not yet published on the city website. So we put it up at 9:14 this morning. In consultation with the city attorney, he was very comfortable with us moving forward tonight in the fact that it had been advertised and available in many places throughout the process, as well as available here in hard copy form at City Hall, which it always would be to anybody who desired to see it. So I can defer to the city attorney if you have any additional questions about that. But the website is one of many ways in which a budget is actually required to be advertised. But the primary advertising is in the newspaper of general circulation.
Okay, so, I mean, obviously we advertise in the newspaper. We don't publish
That's
the
right.
budget in the newspaper. So you're saying we just provide people with information on how to obtain those documents if they were to need them, is what you're saying. Is that correct?
That's right. That's
Okay.
Yes. Yeah, we would provide directions, I guess, on how to access it.
So the fact that we didn't have the packet updated this morning or as of last Wednesday, because I think we published that information a week in advance of the meeting.
Came out on Thursday.
Or came out on Thursday. Okay, that would have just been the most recent version. There were previous versions that were available that we made.
Correct. That are not substantially different from,
Right.
from what you have presented.
Yeah, I mean, the last 3 weeks, really, it's been pretty much zeroed in on what it is today, right?
Correct.
That's
Okay.
correct.
All right, thank you.
Any further questions? I want to say I really appreciate Stacy and Chris sat down with me for about 2.5 hours today, and we went over it line item by line item. So I appreciate them taking that time to go over it with me.
Sure.
Same here.
Is there a motion and a second?
I'll make a motion to approve agenda item 15244.
Second.
Well, we have a motion to approve an ordinance of the mayor and council of the city of Milton, Georgia to adopt the fiscal 2016 budget for each fund of the city of Milton, Georgia, appropriating the amounts shown in each budget as expenditures, adopting the several items of revenue anticipation, prohibiting expenditures to exceed appropriations, and prohibiting expenditures to exceed actual funding available. The motion was made by Councilmember Hewitt and seconded by Councilmember Longoria. All those in favor? Aye. Any opposition? The motion carries. Well, I think we have one item under new business that was moved during our approval of the agenda item. Will the clerk please sound that item?
All right, this item was moved by motion and vote to new business, and it is approval of the September 14th, 2015 special called City Council meeting minutes, agenda item number 15252.
Thank you, Sweetie.
Do we have any council comments or discussion on this item?
Please.
Okay.
As I was going through the several meeting minutes that were posted in the consent agenda, drew attention to the special called meeting of last week, the 14th of September, which started at approximately 5:45. Was considering postponing discussion on the conservation subdivision ordinance. To the best of my recollection, we dispensed with that item in about 15 minutes or so, give or take a few minutes. The next half hour approximately was spent on discussing an open records request issue. I noticed, first of all, it's my opinion anyways, that number one, it was not on the agenda, and I don't think it deserved discussion. And secondly, if it was going to be, or obviously it had been discussed, that that discussion should have been memorialized in our meeting minutes to the extent that other meeting minutes are memorialized in the printed copy. I know the full text is recorded on Granicus, and that's available. But it's totally void of any mention of that discussion. And I'd like to see, or I'd like to recommend that the city clerk put a synopsis of those meeting minutes in those minutes and for our approval, possibly at our next meeting.
Yeah, I remember that we did have additional conversation. I don't remember it lasting that long. I was thinking that it was over about 10 minutes after 6. But
Well, according to the minutes here, the meeting adjourned at 6:27 p.m. when Councilmember Coons moved to adjourn, and you
and I
moved to
seconded it, yeah, so, good point.
That's my
Well, I'll ask the
that's
city,
my comment.
city attorney, what
Yeah.
would be the proper procedure here? Since we do have some questions concerning these minutes, is it proper for us to just to defer the approval of the minutes and let her go back and re-review them and decide what needs to be added to them, and we can vote to approve them at a future date?
Excuse me, Councilman Thurman. I'm fighting off a cold, so I apologize for the way my voice sounds. But I'm looking through your procedures right now, and under minutes, a couple of items jump to my attention. First of all, there's a provision, this is section 21, that more detailed information may be included in the minutes at the request of the city council, which would seem to be the case here. There's a request that these minutes include some additional information. And then, let's see. The minutes of the previous meeting shall be corrected if necessary and approved by the city council at the beginning of each meeting. A majority vote is required for approval. Reading through this, it certainly is an option for the council to defer this until another agenda, or to simply have a motion and a vote to instruct the city clerk to add certain content to those minutes, and then approve those minutes as to be modified. But either way that the council is more comfortable with, either directing the clerk to do that and bringing it back at another meeting to have some time to look at, or simply directing that be done and approving minutes as to be modified.
But what is the pleasure of the council? Seems like the easiest thing is to get her to go back and add that to the minutes, and we'll just approve them at another meeting.
October 5th would be the next meeting.
So I'd ask Sudi, do you have captured the
Well, I can go
content
back
that's
on
missing?
I can go back on Granicus and tell you, and we can do it
Okay.
verbatim.
Okay.
Yeah.
We typically we just do zoning verbatim, but that is the only thing we do.
I don't know that this needs to be verbatim, it just, I think that a general
Expound.
discussion needs to be
Right.
captured in the minutes. What the rest of the council think?
I'm okay with that.
Yeah, I'm all right with that. I was going to ask a question about the requirements for minutes, because there were two questions that were brought up tonight. First one was that the portion of the discussion that was part of the meeting was not actually on the agenda itself, and I'm not aware, so somebody correct me if I'm wrong, I'm not aware that our discussion has to be limited to only those items that are on the agenda. As long as we're in an open meeting, we're covered by the transparency laws to be able to discuss whatever we need to. Now, the agenda is supposed to be used to guide that discussion, but it doesn't have to limit that discussion. The second thing is, do the minutes have to capture all discussions that take place, or do they only have to capture those things that are deemed material or important, or those things that we actually take a vote or action on?
Well, again, referring to your internal rules on minutes, they state that the minutes shall specify the names of the council members present in the meeting, description of each motion or other proposal made in the meeting, the name of each council member who proposed each motion, the name of the council member who seconded each motion, and a record of all votes The name of each council member voting for or against a proposal shall be recorded. So your internal rules seem to contemplate that the minimum requirements of the minutes would be basically any item that resulted in a vote. That said, again, there's a provision that says more detailed information may be included in the minutes at the request of the city council. Also, I believe it's probably a best practice to have your minutes reflect any sort of tangential discussion that may occur, so that if a citizen were going through the minutes and found that interesting, they could then go and request to actually hear the actual recording of the meeting as to that topic.
And we actually go above the bar. At Milton, we have action minutes, and then we have regular minutes. So the ones that we're looking at in front of us are regular minutes. The action minutes are published within 72 hours. And in fact, they go out on social media within almost 24 hours, the motion and votes. Now the content rolls into the next meeting to be approved by council.
I guess my point is, we put some thought into the rules that govern how we capture minutes, and the minutes that we captured for this particular meeting adhered to those rules. So the question I'm asking is, are we missing something in our rules, or are we just calling out something that we thought was so special that they needed to get captured?
Well,
because I don't remember, there wasn't a vote associated with it. We didn't make any decisions. We didn't really do anything.
Well, I guess where I'm coming from, Joe, is we had a special called meeting for one single purpose, and that was to discuss conservation subdivision ordinance. And our regular meeting was supposed to start at 6 o'clock, 15 minutes after the start of the special call. And we dispensed with the CSO discussion, and then we morphed into a discussion that was totally unrelated to that. And my opinion is, if you're going to establish an agenda for a meeting, which we do every week, and we approve that, and I believe we approved the agenda for the special called meeting, that we need to stick to the agenda. And I think each one of us has been instructed from time to time before that if we stray off of the agenda items, we're instructed to get back on topic. And this was totally off topic. And number one, I don't think it complied with our standards for conducting a meeting according to Robert's Rules of Order. And number two, it wasn't captured, that discussion was not captured in these meeting minutes here. So if we're going to establish rules out there, and 9 years ago we established the fact we're going to operate in accordance with Robert's Rules of Order, and we have our own rules here to conduct our own meetings in addition to Robert's, I think we ought to stick with them. And I don't know why we wouldn't want to capture that discussion in meeting minutes, since that consumed twice as much time as our special called meeting.
Well, so, and I guess we're probably spending way too much time
talking
about this, but I guess I remember it as being related to the discussion that we were on, because the open records request was specifically about conservation subdivision ordinance. So to me, we didn't stray off the path that far. And again, like I said, we didn't come to a vote. We didn't tell well, I guess we did give some guidance in terms of a direction for whether or not we were going to ask the consultant to provide content. So, but it wasn't a voted item. So yeah, I worry about changing a decision that we put a lot of thought into in terms of how we govern, how we manage the capturing of minutes and things like that. So I just want to make sure that we're doing the right thing. I'm certainly up to discuss.
I think we're doing the right thing if we capture discussions like this in a meeting. And to your other point, one of my 2 points was, if we're going to establish an agenda for a meeting, we need to stick with the agenda. I've been reprimanded before by our city attorney, and several others of us have also been. So I think it's an issue of decorum. It's an issue of consistency. It's an issue of sticking with the rules that we've adopted, and we're obligated to stick by them. So I don't see why it's a big thing just to capture something like that, even though I was opposed, I object, I think, to bringing up that issue in the first place. I think it's a stretch to say that it was directly related to the conservation subdivision ordinance. It actually dealt with a contractual issue that we had with a hired consultant. Totally different from postponing decision on the conservation subdivision ordinance.
I'm fine for adding the minutes to there, because I think we'll see, especially if you do them verbatim, that it was brought up, I believe, so that if we're postponing this to help make a better decision, to get a total picture of all the documents that the consultant had, for us to help us make that decision whenever we hear this postponement. So I don't have any issue with adding the minutes to the meeting. I disagree a little bit with you, Bill, on the stretch of the agenda and having nothing to do with it, but I think if the deal is to capture the minutes, I think we're all in agreement with that.
I agree with you. I really think that part of the reason why it was brought up in the first place was we were trying to decide whether or not we were going to defer this item, and part of the reason we were going to defer it is so that we could get all the additional information, which included his any information he might have that we may not have. Any further council remarks, or do we have a motion to defer this?
So what exactly is the motion we need to make?
Well, we have an item on our agenda which was originally on the consent agenda,
Right.
which was to approve the September 14th, 2015 special call city council meeting minutes. So we need to act on that, whether or not we approve or defer those.
I'll make a motion.
Okay.
That we defer this item until next
October
regular meeting,
5th.
Pending the city clerk capturing the discussion held on this particular topic at the special call meeting.
We have a second?
Second.
Okay, we have a motion by Councilmember Luss, seconded by Councilmember Coons, to defer the approval of September 14th, 2015 special called city council meeting minutes, agenda item 15-252. All those in favor? Aye. All those opposed? The motion carries. Will the city clerk sound the next item under administrative hearing?
Our next item is under administrative hearing related to alcohol license. Administrative hearing regarding the possible suspension or revocation of the alcohol license for CCE Group, Inc., doing business as Montana's Bar and Grill, located at 13695 Highway 9, Milton, Georgia, 30004. This is agenda item number 15258. Mr. Paul Higby.
Actually, I'll take it. Mayor and Council, what we have tonight is the first meeting of its kind, or first hearing of its kind, and it is to have a disciplinary hearing on an alcohol license business. This particular business, which is Montana's, has failed to get their business license, which was due March 31st. After repeated attempts of contacting the owners, we had to put into place the enforcement procedures that are laid out within Chapter 4, our ordinance on alcoholic beverages. So I will give you just kind of a rundown of what the ordinance says. We have to have due cause, and due cause is the violation of any laws or ordinances pertaining to the regulation of the business. So with them not getting a business license or maintaining their business license, they are in direct violation of laws that are maintained by the City of Milton. The City Council shall be authorized to suspend or revoke an alcoholic beverage license or impose other penalties upon the licensee under the conditions set forth in this section, and I can talk about that in just a moment. We also followed the steps that are laid out and how to suspend a license. The city manager had to give at least 10 days prior written notice to the licensee of the time, place, and purpose of the hearing, and a statement of the charges upon which the hearing before the city council shall be held. In the packet that is in our legislate, there is the letter that was sent to Mr. Eubanks that detailed everything that we are required to list. And sufficient grounds for the immediate suspension or revocation is the licensee. One of the criteria is the licensee has failed to maintain any and all of the general qualifications applicable to the initial issuance of a license as set forth in this chapter. So, under the enforcement part of the ordinance, it states that the applicant has to appear before the city council under a mandatory hearing, and you, the city council, gets to decide what the discipline is for the applicant. You can issue a warning or license suspension or revocation. The suspension can be for a period of up to 30 days for the first violation in a 12-month period. So Montana's, as it states in there, they failed to get the business license. I will also reiterate, too, that they have failed to get their alcohol license and or business license on time ever since the beginning of the city of Milton. They've never been on time. We've always had to go to them and take extra care in making sure that they remain in compliance with our City of Milton ordinances. A lot of times I've had to go to Chris and get him to contact Mr. Eubank. It's entirely up to you. I think we can also hear from Mr. Eubank and hear what he has to say. He still has not gotten his business license renewed as of today. So I'll be happy to answer any other questions, or Chris, if you have anything to say.
I can tell you and follow up on that I have been, after sending the letter, Carrie and I have been in touch a couple of different times. He indicates that the business license item will be rectified by Wednesday of this week. So I just want to put that on the record. That, after sending the letter, the communication has gotten tremendously better leading into tonight's hearing, although once the notice was sent of tonight's hearing, I couldn't undo or reverse that process from the beginning. But he has indicated to me that he will be in compliance with a business license in the next 48 hours. And I think he's here to affirm that as well.
Is our decision today just on whether or not we will have a hearing on the possible suspension or revocation? We are not actually...
This is the hearing.
This is the actual hearing.
Mm-hmm. And you can decide on the action that you would like to take. It could be warning, suspension for up to 30 days, or revocation of the license.
Or you could push it out and say that we think it's a material piece of information to know whether or not the business license is in fact going to be renewed this week. There would be nothing wrong with moving this hearing out until October the 5th to have that piece of information, so that you don't bring closure to this hearing tonight, but you kind of hold it in abeyance. If in fact there's a business license requirement that is triggered later this week, and that we meet that with success. And if the alcohol license is then renewed appropriately, we could report that back to the council.
So right now, the alcohol license isn't renewed either, the business license or the alcohol?
You can't have the second without having the
So
first.
you gotta get the first, so both are outstanding.
No, we have the alcohol license because that was renewed in November, or it was supposed to be renewed in November of last year. And it did get renewed November 19th. It was due on November 15th. But since it has to renew in November, and the business license isn't due until March 31st, there is a lag.
Right now.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, you have to have a valid business license, continue to use the alcohol license. Correct. That was already approved.
Correct.
So, Stacy, how many business licenses are issued by the city?
Oh gosh, I wasn't prepared to answer
You
that.
don't have to give me an exact answer, just roughly. I mean, is it hundreds, thousands, a handful?
200 of business licenses? No.
No, you give me a round number. It's hundreds.
It is.
It is hundreds.
Okay. I'm trying to establish whether or not this is a normal occurrence within the city. In other words, how many business licenses renew on time? A majority of
A
them?
majority of them,
There's
They
penalties.
do.
yes.
Okay,
There are
so-
penalties and interest that do apply.
I mean, are we putting some kind of unreasonable economic burden on our businesses
No,
with
sir.
these licenses? Are they expensive licenses?
No, sir. I mean, expensive, I guess, is also a relative term.
This one,
relative term.
Councilmember, just to give you an idea of what Montana's was last year, was $1,106.
Okay.
I don't know what it would be this year because we don't know what the gross receipts are to be able to calculate it. So I can't tell you. I can tell you it's probably in that ballpark, but the calculation we don't have to be able to give you. I can just tell you what the actual was last year.
Well, I mean, so you're saying that the renewal process requires a piece of data to come from the business so that we can assess what the license actually is going to cost?
Yes.
Depending on the type of business that it is.
Okay.
And when was it originally due?
March 31st.
And you said we could defer this for 1 week, and if it, then 1 week's time, if it was,
Your
had
deferral
not
would
all
actually-
been,
Yeah, your deferral would actually be a couple weeks because we don't meet next week. So the first week, the next meeting would be October the 5th. You could bring back this hearing on the alcohol license if you wanted to. And we would then have the data point as to whether or not the business license, in fact, is renewed this week.
I think that that's the appropriate action to take, is to allow the business to get in sync with what we've been asking for, and we'll allow that to occur, and that way the next meeting will know.
and then assuming that this happens again, and it becomes a habitual thing, then we could take action a little sooner than September.
Well, that's a good point, Karen. I mean, do we have a policy that says within so much time after the renewal period, we review things and bring that to the attention of
In only
whoever?
the extraordinary circumstances would we have gone as far as we've gone tonight. I mean, typically we send code enforcement to the business on multiple attempts to make contact, personal contact, to encourage people to renew their business license. If I have the ability, or if any member of the staff has a quick contact number in the form of a cell phone number or something to the owner, as has been the case in this particular restaurant circumstance, I have no problem picking up the phone and calling it and saying, we got to get you back in, Carrie. It's time to get renewed. So we take extraordinary steps to work with businesses to not be in this position. Frankly, we kind of struck out this year with this one where we couldn't get a response.
When after the March 31st deadline, does it come where we can do this, whether we make the extraordinary steps or not?
Do you want to talk about the process, Bernadette? Are you prepared to do that?
I'm sorry, what was the question?
What's the process to get them to come in? At what point, I mean, do we send out letters? You want to come on up?
I don't think that was the
No, the
question.
question
Oh, okay.
is, when can this 10-day letter go out before September the 3rd? Or whenever you send it?
Oh,
You know,
it can go
after-
out
It could've
April
gone out-
1st.
Yeah, it could have gone out probably in the first part of April.
We ought to
With
put a
strict adherence to the code.
put a little sticky note on our file for next time for this.
So I guess part of the question is, what's the grace period after the due date?
The grace period it actually expires on December 31st, but we give them until March 31st in order to get their taxes in order so they can use their tax data to get the renewal.
So March 31st is the deadline.
Is the deadline of the
And
grace period.
After that,
So you got 90 days after.
the close of the
It's
year.
due on
Correct.
January 1st, but late after the
Yeah.
31st.
That's
basically.
typical.
Right, and most people probably, you see them come in close to the 31st.
We do.
But after the 31st, then you start assessing penalties and late fees for anybody when they do renew the license. There's a penalty associated with that.
Yes, sir.
And to be honest with the council, this is one that we have tried to extraordinarily work with. If you picture where this restaurant is located, it's been a Fulton County and now Milton restaurant doing business in Milton since long before the city existed. It has now a church in proximity to it that if it ever has this alcohol license lapse, we cannot, as a matter of law, get it back.
Right.
So essentially, to not work with this business and to encourage it to lose its alcohol license, we would be putting it out of business. And
But they
I
gotta
don't
help
think
themselves,
we
too.
don't. Right. But that's why we probably have been more flexible and more understanding and more trying to get the right result than we have been quick to issue 10-day letters.
But at
And
the
that's
same
just
time,
being
people
honest.
need to comply with the rules.
I agree with you.
Right, and, you know, we're not doing anybody any favors by extending the time period. I mean, the time period we should be more predictable in how we address this. I know this is interesting circumstances. We've never had this procedure come up before, so I think from a future point of view, we ought to have some, if March 31st is when it's past due, we should give another 2 weeks, and then there needs to be a more predictable process that we can attack this with.
I can address that if you don't mind really quickly. That we've been working this year with the code enforcement team that's moved to the police department now that they've been given clear authorization that they can give citations. And we have proposed, and we're going to put in place for the next cycle, a clear timeline in which finance will report to code enforcement to do follow-ups. So it'll be very exact, very clear. We've also put it on the renewals, so it'll be clear to the business owners so they can know the exact timeline, and I can get a copy of the new renewal with those dates for you if you'd like.
Okay, but what's before us today is whether or not we want to approve, deny, or defer the possible suspension.
And you said the business owner is here?
Yeah, I believe before you take any action,
Yeah.
since this is a public hearing, Mr. Eubank is here. I think you should probably
I agree. I
ask
would
to
like to
hear
have
from
him come
him.
up and speak.
If Carrie, do you have?
Yes.
You want to come up, Carrie?
I appreciate you all giving me the opportunity. I have been in the area for 11 years, have never had a citation from the city. Liquor excise tax is current. Liquor tax or liquor license is current. I opened a new store this year and was underfunded and got in a jam. And that's basically what happened. And again, if the license is revoked, it will never be a restaurant with alcohol, which would be a shame. And would make it not sellable also.
Would you mind stating your name and address just for the record?
Oh, I'm sorry, Kerry Eubank. Business address or personal?
Business address is fine.
13,695 Highway 9 North, Milton, 30404.
And was the city manager correct when saying that you expected to have this rectified by Wednesday?
It will be done by Wednesday.
Okay. Does council have any additional questions from Mr. Eubanks? Okay, do I have a motion? A second?
I'd like to make a motion that we defer the administrative hearing until our next regularly scheduled meeting, and along with that, any actions that would be taken from the hearing.
And that would be the October 5th meeting? Okay.
Second, yeah.
Okay, we have a motion to defer the possible suspension or revocation of the alcohol license for CCE Group, Inc., DBA Montana's Bar and Grill, located at 13695 Highway 9, Milton, Georgia, 30004. The motion was made by Councilmember Morrig and seconded by Councilmember Coons. All those in favor of deferring this until the October 9th, until October 5th council meeting?
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed? The motion carries.
Thank you all.
We're moving on to mayor and council reports. Councilmember Coons.
And I just want to give credit to Councilwoman Thurman and Councilman Lusk for a great job in the Friends of the Milton Library grand opening. You guys did great on that. And being an official meeting, I just want you guys to show how much appreciation that I have for what you were both able to do. That was a great event for the community, and that structure will be there for generations. And both of you guys had a lot to do with that, so I just want to say thanks to both of you and everybody
so thank
else.
you.
So,
Any other council reports? Let's move on to staff reports, beginning with the city manager.
Absolutely. Appreciate your support of the budget tonight. That's been a working document over the last little while, so I appreciate us getting to a spot where we're moving forward with that. I can tell you that we're having some internal meetings and working very diligently on the heels of the council retreat that dealt with strategic plan. So we've got a large set of deliverables that are due back on that topic as far as some operational components due back October the 15th. So it's still on track that you'll see it as we near the end of quarter 4 for implementation in the first part of the calendar year 2016. We've got some published department updates tonight, so we'll move to those, then I'll be happy to take any questions that the council might have of me, starting with the fire department.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. I wanted to update you on Rural Metro, our ambulance provider. Recently, we had learned that they are going through a acquisition with AMR, which is American Medical Response, which is one of the largest ambulance providers in the country, along with Rural Metro. So apparently those two are looking to merge and create one much larger ambulance provider for the country, and that will affect us here in the city of Milton. To what degree, I don't know. We are staying in touch with them. I meet with them monthly to get updates, but what that means for us here locally, I don't know. But I did want to let you know that that is in the works, and it seems to be moving forward. It has not been finalized at this point yet. Yes, sir.
One question on that. Are they, so is this going to be a monopoly, or will there be other competition as well? I'm just curious.
Well, it's interesting. Central Ambulance is the other ambulance provider locally, but they do not provide 911 service. And just recently I received a letter from Central stating that they are now have been acquired by Enhanced Equity, which is a firm out of New York, which also owns Priority Ambulance out of Tennessee. So now they've been acquired. So, and recently they had also petitioned Region 3, which is the regulatory authority for our ambulance provider. They petitioned them to open the zone so they could bid on that, and they were denied based on there was no basis for opening the zone. I think they were looking for some type of contractual changes based on our contract with Rural Metro, and now that they are no longer, which I guess they perceive no longer going to be our provider, they could open the zone based on that. But Region 3 decided no, that was not warranted at this point.
So we don't have any other options, is what you're saying?
We are unfortunately at the mercy of Region 3 on what they do. All we can do is bring our information to them. We monitor response times for Rural Metro every day. So every single call we look at to make sure they're within the contracts that we've all agreed upon. And then if there's anything that falls outside that, then we sit down with them and find out and determine what the problem was and why they didn't meet their agreement. In addition, they've also changed all their 24-hour unit trucks to 12-hour trucks. So they'll be constantly changing crews throughout the day and throughout that 24-hour period. So that, to me, is concerning as well because of the delay when a crew getting off and a crew coming on, what that means. My concern is that they're going to pull a unit, which is up at 43, move them south to change crews, and then bring them back up. We've got that gap there. So we're watching that closely, and I'll keep you informed if we have any more, if we have any issues with that. But just something to monitor and keep our eye on and see what that's going to do for us.
Chief, do they have berthing accommodations at 43 then?
We do, yes.
Okay.
Yes. Apparently they're not going to be able to use those any longer, so they will be vacant at this point. So, but we were also given a subsidy by Rural Metro as part of the contract to pay for utility fees and station, condiments and stuff like that. They participate in a 24-hour period with the fire crews. So I don't know what that means either. If they're not going to be there to use those, how is that going to change? So there's some contractual issues that are going to have to be looked at once this works its way out. So, but I'll keep you informed as we move forward with that. The final tornado siren is going to be installed in the next couple of weeks at Providence Park. We're finalizing that. Matt Marietta is working on that. So that will be the last one that we've purchased that will actually be installed. and then he'll do another coverage map to see if there are any gaps left and what we'll do with that to fill those gaps with the sirens. We're updating our job descriptions in the fire department. That was at the request of the Human Resources Department, which actually has proven to be a good exercise for us in the department. We really have gotten into diving into actual job description and really looking at what people are doing and are they working within their assigned duties. And then it'll also help with the folks as they go through promotional processes, as well as when we do our career development, which we're working on now. We're putting in their educational requirements for the future. So captains will be required to have associate's degrees, battalion chiefs will be required to have bachelor's degrees, and that's being planned out over the next 5 years. So this has proven to be good for us. We attended the HUD Family Resource Center grand opening. I believe we saw some of the council there. And recently we met with the Red Cross to review their capabilities during a disaster. Typically in Milton, when we have a fire or something, the community comes together and homeowners have enough resources to actually take care of themselves. So really we haven't had to rely on the Red Cross like some other communities. But we wanted to see what would happen if we had an apartment complex, had some type of an event, or a community was struck by a tornado or something. What other resources do we have at our means to help the community? So we met with them, and what we've learned is that we don't have a representative in the area from Red Cross, so our delay in getting a response is increased from somebody who is like downtown Atlanta or DeKalb County or something where they have representatives locally. So we are going to work with the Red Cross to see if we can get some volunteers to be a part of a more northern North Fulton area resource. So we can make that contact with them directly and have a response or somebody, at least on the phone, giving us some direction and some assistance. One of the other things that I thought was important that I didn't know was that the Red Cross has a direct contact with the military. So if we have a family in Milton who has a military service person that's overseas or something, they're a direct liaison between them. So we could simply call them and they can make those right phone calls to advise the family or a family member of something that had, that they needed to know about. So I thought that was a good resource for us as well. So we'll be working with the Red Cross and seeing what else they can provide for us in the city. So that's all. Yes, sir.
Last time I asked Chief Krokoff to make an org chart for the police department, and he did, and it was great and helped me a lot, and I'd love to see one for the fire department as well.
I will have that to you the next day.
That'd be great. Love to see it.
Is that rest of the council, or just I'll send one to all of the, or through Chris to all the council? Sure. Be happy to do it.
Cool.
Well, you wouldn't just give it to Matt and not give it to us.
Well, no, there's just a level of interest. I don't know if it's equal or not. That's all. That's all. But I'll be happy to provide that, yes. Any other questions? Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, moving on to finance.
I'm not speaking on finance.
While Bernadette's walking up here and coming up to the mic, I wanted to announce that the City of Milton has received the GFOA Certificate of Achievement for Excellence in Financial Reporting for the FY14 CAFR. Got it today. So I just wanted to put that out there.
3 years in a row now?
So how many years in a row?
7 years in a row? 6 years in a row?
Good.
Yeah, because we didn't get the FY07, so 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, and 14.
Great. That's wonderful.
Good evening, everybody. As we mentioned earlier, the tax bills were prepared at the end of August, and they were mailed out the first week of September. Property taxes are due by November 2nd of 2015. We've already been seeing money coming in, and I will have some updates on the 2015 collections coming in the next meetings. We're moving along with our tag intern from Cambridge High School. He's helping us a great deal at updating our current purchasing policies. We're looking at implementing a P-card policy in written format into that current ordinance. And he's also working with our finance team to get a better understanding of local government finance from that perspective. I think it's going along very well. We're also preparing, continuing to prepare for the end of FY15 and the start of FY16. Once this budget has been approved and appropriated, we will go ahead and start digging into applying that budget and with the continuation of ensuring that everything in FY15 has been properly allocated to the right accounts. And then we've made our first draw on the revenue bond as well. I'm not sure if you've heard this before, but $6,372,470 to cover the to-date expenditures for the construction of Bell Memorial Park. So that's our August updates. Does anyone have any questions? Yes.
This is just one of those things because I want to make sure I'm not misinterpreting any data.
Okay.
We give reference to 2 lines below in your update, the 2 lines below the percentage of property taxes that have been collected, that the revenue or the expenditures are either over or under anticipated.
Yes.
And we use the brackets to indicate that it's under.
And then we have a minus sign.
But we have minus signs, so I just want to make sure I'm not somehow not understanding
I will
some
ask
secret
for
accounting codes that you guys are using.
no secret code. I don't do the formatting, so I'll just ask for the formatting to be
All right.
consistent going
Just
forward.
checking. All right, thank you.
No problem. But we are continuously under.
Yes, yeah, I was like, well, is somehow this a positive or?
We are continuing to be under anticipated on expenditures on a regular basis and over on anticipations for revenues.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
Right down. On the Bell Memorial Park, is that the cost to date, the $6,300,000?
Yes, sir. That was what it was at the time that I drew the money down from the revenue bond.
Okay.
We have since spent some more funds, so I plan on drawing another amount down in October, I believe, and probably the rest down whenever it finishes out.
What's the total contract amount?
Do you have that?
Jim knows.
Jim, do you have, Carter was here, he was, but do you have total contract costs?
Yes.
Bell parking in your head?
Including the change order where we added the second turf field, it's $9.9 million approximately.
What's the percentage of complete to date?
I don't know that I'm
We can
qualified
get
to
that for
answer
you.
that question. I'm sorry.
What have they drawn today?
What have they
As-
drawn today?
Yes.
For the revenue bond or the
No,
amount
what
that
has the
they've?
contractor billed today?
We can get all that information for you and send it to you.
Okay.
I don't have those numbers right off the top of my head.
So it appears that, and how long does it take to draw on the revenue bond?
An afternoon. It's very quick.
So we can match a current pay application from the contractor then?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
And we are up to date with payments for them as well. We just made another about $800,000 payment to them last week.
Bob Buscemi watches that very, very carefully
I
to make sure that
understand
we're not paying a penny more than we should.
I've heard those stories.
Yes, they're true.
Thank you.
We'll get that. We'll get that information to you later tonight or in the morning. We'll get it to everybody.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Dave, you're up.
Information taken.
Dave, where's the tie, Dave?
We told him he didn't have to last time.
I was afraid to get up in front of the microphone because I don't know if I'm going to blow the speaker out because I can't run over there and adjust it. Anyway, moving along with our integration with VC3 services, we thought it was prudent to go ahead and review their practices to make sure that they conform to industry best standards. And it turns out that they have annual audits that they do by an outside vendor, and I'm going to try and pronounce it Bauchnight, Petrus, and Stormer consultants. So they review everything that VC3 does, from their internal practices, their services delivered, to the how they interact with their clients, basically how they advertise themselves, and if they perform according to the standards that they advertise, and they do. They also audited their internal technical practices, which there are national standards for those, the same as we have for our financial audits every year. They conform to the AICPA, the correct me if I'm wrong, American Institute of Certified Public Accountants. They do have technical standards as well, and VC3, I'd never heard of them before either. But VC3 does conform to their technical standards, both in safety and security, and everything from internal policies, how they handle security internally, how they handle employees, how they monitor technical issues, how they respond, their disaster recovery, and how they outsource various services that they require as well. And they did pass this audit. That was done in April of this year.
So you're saying this wasn't like a SOC or a SAS audit? You're saying it's based on the accounting?
It's under the EICPA standards, but they have a technical digest that they follow, that they look at, how they encrypt their data, their virtual networking, how they silo their different clients, because they do support multiple clients in a complementary fashion, but not in an overlapping fashion.
Did they give you a copy of the results of the audit?
Yes, I actually have it with me.
Okay. Could you send me a copy of that?
I can't make copies of it. It's a sensitive document, but I can let you see it.
Okay.
Any other questions?
No.
Thank you.
Yeah, that's right. I was thinking the same thing.
No questions come my way because I'm in trouble. Innovation and engagement, Jason.
I'll go first, and then Angela's going to follow up. So I just want to give everybody some updates on the projects we got going forward. The first one's online permitting. Vince and Michelle, being the subject matter experts of the nuts and bolts of what that's actually going to look like, have turned in all the paperwork necessary to Meritage so that Meritage can begin to stand up all the processes that we have in-house already. That's one of the advantages, is that we already use the software for in-house, so all we've got to stand up is the client-facing site. So then another thing, our parks and facility rental program registration, you guys approved that tonight. That was that Cerulean Rec 1 agreement. It's great. They're a company. They're located in Crabapple. And so last little step of that is approving the finance gateway so that people can pay for everything online. And we'll be able to do all facilities rentals online. We'll be able to do Camp Joyful Souls online. CPR Saturdays is set up in there. And as police formalizes Citizens Police Academy and Kubaton Defense and other programs like that, as they require payment, we'll be able to do every bit of that online. And then our innovation team met informally last week to discuss the parameters of the project. So I really look forward to getting started on this. We're going to have the first meeting in October. It's neat. It's going to be an interactive experience once a month where we actually all remote in and discuss everything with the folks from the Alliance for Innovation. So that should be a really great project, and I think everybody's pretty excited about the implications of what we're going to be able to do. And then just wanted to tell you, we are working as a team, as Chris said, on the strategic plan. Right now we're working on goal and objective worksheets to really nail down the tactical plans that we want, and then also look at the way that we measure everything and start to look at, because we've rounded the corner of what's important from we now are hitting all of our the things we're supposed to be doing. So now we can start to measure, are we doing it well? How do people like the work that we are doing? And so you're going to start to see a lot of that work for a strategic plan, and then also chop up the National Citizen Survey into our strategic plan so that we can have a bi-yearly document that goes out that's scientifically validated, that's able to give us good metrics that we can define ourselves against.
Who is on the innovation team?
A lot of people. There's 12 members. Let's see, it is myself, Bernadette, Angela, Courtney, Matt Falstrom, Sean McCarty, Sam, Jason Griffin. That's right. Yeah. So it's a cross-functional team. The point of the innovation team was to take people from all strata of the organization and all levels of service, and put us all together I simply facilitate it to start to look at ways that we can innovate through process that might be a good case study for other municipal governments similarly situated. Yes, sir.
On your meritage system,
Yes.
I'd like to see all of the aspects that it covers and the time relationships between each of the different functions. For instance, when a permit is submitted, when it goes in front of the different departments, when inspections are made and recorded, and when particularly the final inspections with all of the different departments, and how it all relates to a certificate of occupancy, what drives that, or where the trigger is to drive the CO on a project.
Absolutely. The process that we have already established, it will simply virtualize that process. And the beauty of this Meritage system is that everyone, both the public-facing side and the staff-facing side, have a dashboard. So as soon as this person sends in their information, it pops up in the staff member's dashboard. And it understands the workflow process that we've established. That's part of what they're setting up right now. So that will be very easy to show you as soon as we get it set up. And what we're going to do is get it in a workable form, invite some contractors, and we're going to try and get the focus group of some people that necessarily don't know how to use stuff like this, and bring them together and have everybody start clicking through it and trying to figure out what, to make it as easy as possible for anyone who's going to come into contact with it.
I'd like to be on that. Or
You got it.
included in that group if possible.
You got it. Go ahead.
Okay. Yeah, so Jason, I'm sorry, but were you done?
Oh, yes.
As a follow-up to that, do we have baseline data? To Bill's point, what he's getting at is the workflow that you're describing.
Yes.
I don't know how many steps, and
Yeah,
I'm sure
yeah,
every
yeah,
single
yeah.
permit has a different number of steps that are associated with it. And each step is responsible for a certain amount of time in the overall process. Do we have baseline data that we can draw on for what we do today and how fast and how quickly we can react, how the workflow actually works today?
Yes.
So that, and I'm hoping here, but 6 months
You're
from
right.
now,
Yes.
after this gets implemented, we can see, gosh, this has saved us, 25%. We become this much more responsive to the public and that kind of stuff.
Yes, we absolutely do. We actually track every single permit, by every single permit type, by how long it takes, and we can show you exactly where it goes. Christine has done a fantastic job mapping out the process for the city manager and working with community development. So we've absolutely got that mapped.
Right.
And actually, what I'd love to do is figure out cost per permit per day, and actually figure that cost savings out. I would love to do that because I think that is a metric that can tell a great story.
As long as it's a savings.
I'm almost certain it will be.
I've got that, Councilmember. Any of you, if you'd like to see that data, if it sits every month, the most recent month's data sits right next to my monitor on the left of my monitor. So if you're ever in my office, just look left of the monitor and you'll see a bunch of lines on graphs, and it shows exactly where permits are in all steps of the process. And I can tell you, since we've started to track the process on that level, in many circumstances, we're showing where we're now saving days in the permit process as opposed to hours, just by being purposeful in the metrics that we're collecting and tracking.
Saving whose
From
days are you saving?
start to finish, from application to CO, that we're showing that we push a CO out the door faster now than we, say, did a year ago.
If you want a good
I'll talk to you about that afterwards.
Yeah,
That's a different experience.
we use a main metric of health that we display on the website, and that's residential permit time. So if you look on our website under the analytics section, we break it down into, so I can tell you for the last month it was 15.8 days, right? And then so out of that we break down Milton time, unaccounted time, user error time, user lag and pickup time, and then total time. So that's a relatively good indicator of how we're doing. So just check that. It's on the website. You can click it, and then it'll take you in to show you all the permits too, how long they take.
Good stuff.
Thank you. Angel's coming up next.
Good evening. I have a couple of things to just run down quickly with you all. Obviously, October 3rd is Crab Apple Fest. I think everyone knows about that, probably in this room. But if you all are interested in volunteering or you know anyone that is, please let us know. Courtney and I would love to put some people to work in our information booth for the event. We have Carving and Crab Apple coming up October 24th. It's a new partnership with CCA on that. It's not going to actually cost us anything, and we're just going to help them with carving some pumpkins. So I'll have more details for that at the next council meeting. Better Together had a very successful business connection event at Wilbur and Rudy's on Friday. Thank you for those that stopped by. And as previously mentioned, we'll have the first Milton Literary Festival in Crab Apple on November 13th and 14th. We already have 27 authors booked to participate for various presentations and workshops that weekend. As far as communications go, we joined Nextdoor last week, which is a newer platform for social media to connect with HOAs and residents in our community. We joined as a public agency profile, so we'll be able to push information out that way. That's all. Yes.
Along that same line, do we have information on HOAs within the city, different subdivisions? Do we have contact information?
We do. We keep a database. Public Works, as well as myself, share it. But as you know, HOA presidents are always kind of coming in and out. But we do try to maintain a current database of that. Thank you.
Perfect. And then Human Resources.
Good evening. One of the things on my reports that seems to stand out to me over the last few months has been lost time at work injuries under work comp. We've had several days each month, bordering on 2022, 28, I think, recently, on lost time injuries. I'm pretty happy to report that everybody's back at work today and was last week, so those numbers should be going down, hopefully, in the future. The person who was the most injured is back to work last week on light duty and remain on light duty for a brief period of time before returning to full duty, hopefully in 5 more weeks. So those numbers should be going down, and it's good everyone's back at work. GMA, it seems, has effective today took a step back from workers' comp and has outsourced all their workers' comp function. We still have our coverage with GMA, and it's through them, but they rotated some staff and went with a private company to manage their claims. So not sure how I feel about that just yet, but we'll find out over the next few weeks. Health insurance, we had another large loss. The large losses continue to drive our plan. About 35% of our claims are from 7 losses that have exceeded $25,000. So we're trying to look at that and going forward on how we can better control those. And Chris stole a little bit.
I have a question on that. Is that, I mean, are the injuries or illnesses different, or just the costs have just skyrocketed?
On our health insurance
Well, what
issues?
you just said. Obviously, we're talking about those costs.
Those are
going
health
up.
insurance numbers, and what it really revolves around is large losses that exceed $25,000. So you're going to have a number of them. I think this year we're up because we have 7 that have exceeded $25,000. I think this time last year we were probably at 2. The number was about the same with those 2 versus the 7 we currently have. But it's the 80-20 rule on steroids. 80% of your claims are going to come from 20% of your data, and we're being driven by 7 claims.
So
Yes, sir.
are all of these personal injury claims?
No, the Those are health insurance claims that were personal illnesses, catastrophic illnesses that have affected our claims. The workers' comp, the lost time, is a separate function that was injuries at work that happened to our employees. And
How many of those did we have occur this past year?
I think the number is at, hang on just a second, let me look at the report.
I think I've seen it before.
We had 2 ongoing, so let's see. Since January, we've had 2, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8.
8 personal injury claims?
Workers' comp claims, yes. Employees injured on the job in some manner.
Who's our designated safety officer?
That would be me.
And what kind of, I haven't seen your safety program. What are we doing to be proactive about?
Well, most of the injuries are back on the departments. Things that happen are not particular safety issues on the work site. It's things that happen very quickly in the line of duty. Our large loss, the largest one that we had lost time injury on, was an employee. I think they've changed the training regulations because he was injured during the course of training. And I think they changed some of those requirements so that doesn't happen again. We look at the claims as they occur, and if there's anything that can be done or if we need to make a policy change, we do so in more of a reactive manner because a lot of these you just simply can't predict. And the last thing, as I mentioned, last few weeks we've been pretty much heads down on open enrollment. I think Chris hit some of the highlights. We have 135 employees we expect to get data back from on what health insurance plans and benefits they want for the coming year. And today was the soft deadline, and we've gotten back about 100, so that's very good. We'll start hunting some folks down and getting some more forms back in the next couple of days, so that's going well also. Are there any other questions that I can answer? Great. Thank you. Have a good night.
Council, just in tidying up, I think she sent you an email. I just want to make sure that she did, so you're not trying to reach out to Christine for the next month or so. She's out on medical leave until the end of October at the earliest at this point. So if you need anything that you would routinely need from Christine, just please feel free to shoot that to me. That's all the reports we have tonight, Council, unless you have any specific questions, and we do not have an executive session.
We do not have an executive session?
Do not.
Okay, so
I'll move to adjourn the regular meeting.
the motion's been made by Councilmember Lusk and seconded by Councilmember Morrig to adjourn. All in favor? Aye. I assume there is no opposition.